Ladies and gentlemen, I have some huge news for you. Again, this is absolutely massive because the media, they've been lying to you. They've been telling you this whole time that the small banks, they're the ones that are in trouble, and all the deposits are being taken out of the small banks and they're all going into the major four banks like JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, etc. And they're telling you that the big banks are fine. There's nothing, to worry about at the major four US banks. We only need to worry about these small regional banks when, if they go under, it's not going to be an issue for the financial system. Well, people, they're lying, and they're lying through their teeth. And I have the charts, the facts to back it up. And from the Federal Reserve themselves and the banks data themselves, the H8 report. So we just got a report that shows exactly how much, to the dollar, how much deposits is being taken out of not just the small banks, but the big banks, okay? And guess what? There's more money being taken out of the banks, more than double than the small banks. So I've got this report on my phone here. Again, I'm on the road, but this is so important, everyone. I need to get this out to you. So I'm going to go over this chart here on my phone, but I'm going to provide a link in the description. So again, you can fact check this. This is all factual from the Federal Reserve themselves on how much deposits are fleeing. So listen to this. Deposits of JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, and Wells Fargo shrank by guess what? Guess how much money deposits left their banks? That's right, $465 billion year over year has been taken out of just the big four alone. Okay, this is absolutely massive. And again, this is twice the amount. They're not just one, two, or three small regional banks. This is twice than all 4,000 other small banks combined. This is absolutely crazy here. And I've got a chart here from Wednesday, April 27th, 2022. They had 11.18 trillion in deposits, and now it's fallen to 10.536 trillion. Okay, so again, people, what the media are telling you that the big four banks are fine, they're taking all this money, nothing to worry about, that's a complete lie. Okay, now we're going to get more in depth in this report because there's an absolute huge amounts of gems in this report. So listen to this. Because these banks are the same one that the Fed has been bailing out since the financial crisis of 2008, that narrative requires believing that our fellow Americans are dumber than a stump. And that's right, these politicians must think you're really stupid because they know they're lying, we know they're lying, but they're still lying. And, it's coming out, just more and more blunt. The press secretary, I think she hasn't said a true word come out of her mouth. When they do these press conferences, they just lie through their teeth. But of course, if we say anything that goes against their agenda, well, that's misinformation. But they're literally speaking misinformation every day. But it goes on. Okay, we decided to check that the narrative for ourselves. Not only is that scenario wrong, but it's so decidedly wrong, and it's so easy to get the accurate figures. That's right, we can get it from the Federal Reserve themselves. That from where we sit, it looks like there might be an agenda by someone to harm smaller banks, since its short sellers have benefited to the tune of $6 billion from this misinformation, and the Securities and Exchange Commission should find out who the public relation firms are that place these erroneous information and who paid for them. So that's right, these big banks, guess what? They've benefited massively from this. JP Morgan Chase, they brought First Republic for pennies on the dollar, and guess what? We paid for all the bad assets they brought. So they took all the good assets from First Republic, okay, and then we paid for all the assets they have losses on. Absolutely ridiculous, everyone. And again, they benefited $7 billion from shorting these smaller banks. Now, each Friday at approximately 4:15, the Federal Reserve releases its H.8 report, showing the assets and liabilities of commercial banks in the United States, and monthly deposit data is included going back 1 year, as well as deposit data for each of the last 4 weeks. So data is also broken down by the 25 largest banks and the approximate 4,000 small banks. Equally helpful, the folks at the St. Louis Fed make it possible to chart much of that H8 data via its Fred charting tools, and we can see again the amount that was withdrawn from the big bank. So again, this is there for everyone to see, but unfortunately, you know, a lot of people, they don't go past the headline. They see a headline and they don't want to do any research themselves, but at least you got me to do that for you, to go through these charts and articles every day, and so I hope you appreciate that. The largest banks in the US as measured by deposits are JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo. And like we said, between April 27th, 2022 and April 26th, 2023, we're going to break it down individually now by how much these banks are losing individually. So JP Morgan Chase lost, guess how much? 184 billion in deposits. Guess how much Bank of America lost? 162 billion. And how much did Wells Fargo lose? 118.7 billion. So JP Morgan, the biggest bank in the US, they've actually lost the most. So again, they're trying to tell you that, look, these big banks are fine, but they're actually seeing the biggest deposit flight. Okay, the deposit losses at JP Morgan, let's bring it up here, keeps moving the article. This phone I got is being funny. The deposit losses at JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America and Wells Fargo, like I said, they're more than double the 4,000 small banks. And Bank of America and Wells Fargo, I'm just trying to get the key information here, everyone, not skip over all the fluff. So Bank of America and Wells Fargo not only lost those large deposit sums on a year-over-year basis, but both banks saw deposits fall during the first 5 quarters, including the quarter ending March 31st, 2023, when headlines were declaring that they were seeing big inflows of deposits. Remember that, everyone? They were saying, look, the big 4 banks are seeing massive inflows of deposits. All the money's taken out of small banks going in the big banks. The media was lying to you because they didn't want to cause panic and cause a bank run, because we were this close, everyone, to seeing the banking system go down. But when the Federal Reserve and the FDIC came out and guaranteed all the deposits at Silicon Valley Bank, which they shouldn't have done because it was just a lot of their billionaire friends and politicians, that caused a lot of the panic to ease. But again, this is a house of cards, everyone, and eventually it will fall, just like what happened in the early 1900s with the Panic of 1907. Look that up. Nearly brought America to its knees. Okay. So again, just goes over that this is misleading information, and we go over to the conclusion of this report. So to give you an idea of how pervasive this false narrative has been about the big banks sloshing around in all those deposits, fleeing the small banks, as recently as April 26th, the Bloomberg columnist said that was syndicated to the Washington Post, likely to be read by a large number of members of Congress in the article. So the summary from Canadian firm Palos Management explains nearly why bigger banks are still okay. The first quarter performance of the Big Four was consistent with broad consensus that the Big Four banks have capitalized on massive deposit inflows, clearly related to the well-documented liquidity stress facing the smaller regional-based brethren. This should come as no surprise. The panic-fueled depositor exodus from the small banks to the larger, too big to fail banks is simply a rational decision, protection of capital rules. So why would a journalist, so again, this was misinformation that they're spreading. They say here, why would a journalist rely on unverified deposit data from a Canadian firm when the deposit data is readily available from the bank's own filings with the SEC, as well as the Fed's H8 weekly release? So again, they're releasing these reports, trying to tell you that don't worry, the banks are fine, the banks are safe, getting massive inflows, when this article here, and again, I'll put a link in the description, debunks all of this. So everyone, I know we think, well, okay, what does all this mean in simple terms? Because it can get very complicated. What it simply means is this banking crisis is not over. They're trying to tell you it's over because that's their job, to try to stop the panic, okay? But billions and billions of dollars is being withdrawn out of the banks every single week. And I'm watching this chart at the Federal Reserve, not just the Big Four, but all deposits. And when I look at this every week, it is still going down, okay? There's still big issues. The banks are still not paying their customers enough for the risk of keeping their money in the banks. A lot of people before thought it was safe, and that's why they'll say, okay, look, even though I'm getting 1% interest, my money's safe in the banks. Well, now your money's not safe in the bank, so why would you take on all that risk for a 1% return? Well, you wouldn't, and that's why people's pulling out money. So we're going to have to watch these deposits, continue to watch these deposits at the Big Four to see what could happen next. But everyone, what do you think about this? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you all in the next video.